1990, I spent 4 weeks in Mali, a country in West Africa. I was down there visiting my brother and sister-in-law who were in the Peace Corps. Has anyone here ever had an opportunity to do that, go visit a Peace Corps volunteer in the field? It's really a really cool experience because they live with a family, so they're part of a community. And so if you ever get an opportunity, whether it's your kid or your grandkid or a sibling, I highly recommend doing this because you're actually involved in the community. And so I was down there for about 4 weeks, and one of the things that intrigued me at the time was that they asked me to take on an African name. They were living with a family, and it was important that I be part of the community as well. So my name was Awa during the month that I was there. But also what intrigued me was the language. The language is called Bambara, and the greeting is Iniche. Now what I love about this greeting is exactly the translation, and the translation is you and yourself. It's an acknowledgement. So when you see somebody in the morning and you're going about your day and you say Iniche, you're looking at them and you're saying you and yourself. It's really kind of interesting because you can take this a little bit further and the whole thing can get very complicated very quickly, but you can say Ini Sagoma and Ini Kachaya, and you're basically saying you in your morning and you in your work. And so not only am I saying I see you, but I'm also saying that I see you working and I see you in your morning. And this is very essence of community. I see you. So I'm Lara Feltin, and I'm the co-founder and CEO of Biznik. And Biznik is a community for independent business owners. And we've been in Seattle, is where we were founded, about 6 years ago. I'm going to be talking about trust today. And specifically, I'm talking about trust as it pertains to your business relationships. There's been a lot of blurring of the line between friends and what a friend is online, which anytime you join a network, you're friends, and then the people who are your personal friends. But when it comes to trust in a business context, it's about building trust. It's not about winning it, it's about building it, and then it's about taking care of it. So I have 5 grounding principles that relate to building trust in business relationships. Really close to changing these slides. There we go. The first one is know thyself. So let's do a quick show of hands. Who here relates to the term entrepreneur? They think of themselves as an entrepreneur. Okay, a couple of you. How about independent business owner? A couple of you. Okay, good. And freelancer? Yeah. And small business person? And self-employed? Okay. So I'm somebody else who raises my hand multiple times when I think of these. But what's interesting is that there are distinct characteristics of each one of these, specifically as it relates to entrepreneur and independent business owner. And if you know what those differences are, it helps you set different expectations when you go into networking opportunities and when you go into professional relationships where you're hoping to gain something professional from that relationship. So these are very general, but when you break it down, basically I think the way you look at an independent business owner versus an entrepreneur is you look at these kinds of questions. Is the motivation to earn a living, or is it to make an impact? Are you trying to build a profit, or are you trying to build equity and make an acquisition? Have you created a job for yourself, or are you seeking financial freedom? Did you invest your own money, or did you invest someone else's money? And ultimately, when it comes to the work style, is this a long-term project for you? Are you comfortable with the repetitive tasks that are involved in being an independent business owner? Or are you someone who's really a short-term serial inventor and you're going to be interested in a couple years on moving on to the next project? Now there's a lot of overlap, and I'm the first to say, you know, I look at that and I'm a little bit entrepreneur and I'm a little bit independent business, and sometimes I completely just change my mind back and forth. But I look at the analogy of a lemon tree, and this is kind of how it sums it up for me. Let's say that you've got an orchard and a big piece of property in the back of your house. You've got these amazing award-winning lemons that somebody left on the property. Now, if you're entrepreneurial, there's a few things you can do with those. You can take those lemons and you can make lemonade at the end of your driveway. You can also pick those lemons and go market them to a restaurant. Or you could be something who's really creative, and you could take those lemons and you could make some kind of spa treatment or special hair treatment where you're doing special highlights and you're providing a service on your property with those lemons. You could scrap the lemons all together and go team up with a chemist, and you could create a hair product that you sell to Whole Foods. Or you could be inspired by the lemons and you could put them into slingshots, and you could say, hey, we're just going to throw these things at pigs and put it on every mobile app in the entire world. Except that one's already been done. But the point is that, again, with the different types of needs that you also have different relationships and different communities where you can participate based on what those needs are. So if you're somebody who has a brick and mortar business up on Capitol Hill, the Capitol Hill Chamber of Commerce is going to be a really great fit for you. Because the kind of networking happens there is they get together and they team up on the holiday decorations. They also pool together resources when it comes to clean and safety and the graffiti. They go into a group bid when it comes to negotiating with sound transit. And they also tend to network with one another. They go into marketing materials together at times. Now if you're a startup, something like Seattle 2.0 or Northwest Entrepreneur Network is also going to be a great fit. Because if you're looking for investors, or if you're looking for an advisory team and you're looking for some people that can help you take this product and move it towards an acquisition, the Northwest Entrepreneur Network is a great place for some of those kinds of workshops. BNI, Business Network International, is a good place for an indie business person who's providing a service. Photographers, real estate agents, and people who provide massages. They get together once a week and they pass referrals to one another. And they do that on BNI. LinkedIn helps you manage your professional graph. So we all have professional LinkedIn profiles. Whether you're an independent business owner or a day jobber, we all have a presence on LinkedIn. And then you can use a community like Biznic where you can share resources and referrals and you can connect with one another both online and face-to-face. Maybe. So why am I emphasizing so much on the differences? Again, the reason I emphasize on that is it's important that you fish where the fish are, but it's also important that you act and look and act like those fish. So as I was doing my research today, I came upon this book called The Trusted Advisor. And I came up with this really fabulous equation called the trust test. Now, T, of course, stands for trust. C, R, and I stand for credibility, reliability, and intimacy. The S stands for self-orientation. So credibility and reliability in business, we get that, right? So if someone's giving you the signal that they're credible, that they are who they claim to be, that they do well, that they are good at what they say they do, that's the credible piece. If they show up when they say they're going to show up, if they consistently do what they say they're going to do, that's reliability. And intimacy, when it comes to business, is really nothing more than how does it feel? What is the emotional impression that you had from this person? Could you tell them a secret? Social orientation is the negative piece. Social orientation is the higher it gets, the lower the trust score becomes. So a low self-orientation would be somebody who says, hey, I'm going to pass you on to my competitor, even though this is a $10,000 gig, because he's a much better fit. That actually increases the trust in the equation. And then a high self-orientation score is going to be somebody who's really smarmy and salesy. They show up with their business cards all the time. They come to conferences like this and they're constantly talking about themselves and trying to make a deal. They come into a community and they try to sell everybody on their services, and if they don't find a client, they quickly leave. So not only have they diluted the community and started to piss a lot of people off, but they've established no trust whatsoever. The wonderful thing, though, about this equation, though, is as all of them begin to rise, as the credibility and the reliability and the intimacy begin to rise, of course you can start to be more salesy. Of course you can increase that self-orientation. So the second one, I'll go back here, of my guiding principles is be human. And I like to use the story of Max and Elsie. Let's say I have two dogs named Max and Elsie. Anyone else here have dogs? Okay, cool. That hand up went really fast. So where do you like to walk your dog? Okay. Discovery Park, right. Now I'm out in Ballard, so if I recently just moved to Ballard, where would be a good place for me to walk my dog? Oh, right, Shilshal. Okay. And so if you're familiar with Shilshal, you might actually know some Italian restaurants over in Ballard too. Do you know of any Italian restaurants in the area? Can anyone tell me an Italian restaurant that they recommend in the Ballard area? Volterra, right. Now that's one that always comes to mind because it's a nice restaurant, it's pretty fancy. My in-laws are coming to town, that's why I'm looking for a nice place that someone recommends. But the truth is my mother-in-law is kind of a picky eater, and she's all gluten-free and vegetarian, and I don't know if I really need to take her to Volterra. But when it really comes down to it, I'd love to get her a really good naturopath. You know, she lives out in the boondocks of Canada, and no offense, but they've got this country doctor out there, and he's great, but if I got her to a naturopath, it's possible that maybe that person could work with her on her food issues. So can anyone vouch a naturopath? There you go. And you don't even have to answer me right now. But do you see what's happening here? What's happening is know, like, and trust. I asked you if you know of any dog parks. And then I asked, can anybody recommend a restaurant? I can go to Yelp, that's true. But if I just want to know about a restaurant, I probably can just walk the streets as well. So I ask my community, you are my community today. I ask you, who can you recommend? That's part of the like part. And then when it came to something like a health practitioner, this is something where the trust score needs to be a little bit higher. This is somebody in my family, I care about them, and health is a sensitive subject. So I'm looking, can somebody vouch for it? So what kind of business do you run? Is it easy for you to recommend your business? And is it easy for others to recommend your business? Or is your business the kind of business where vouching is very important? And if that's the case, then that's part of knowing thyself. Know, like, and trust is the backbone of marketing, but it's also the backbone of community. And before there were things like Friendster and Tribe and MySpace and Classmates.com, and now we've got Facebook and LinkedIn, there were some guys in Africa who basically narrowed it down to one phrase, and that is, I see you. Iniche. And really, for me, that is what the backbone of social networking is. Social networking is a technology. It's a technology that makes it easier for us to have the relationships in the community that we have in the real world. So amongst your 3,000 followers, your 300 friends, there are maybe 30 people who can vouch for you. If you're lucky, you have 30 people who can vouch for you. And amongst that entire network are maybe 3 people who you could be doing business with this week. Depends on your business. Maybe you could be doing business with them this month or this quarter. Maybe 3. So who are they? And where are they? And more specifically, how are you taking care of those relationships? And who do they know that trust their opinion? Where are those people as well? And how are you taking care of the people who trust you? Mark Granovetter, raise your hand if you are familiar with this study. No? Okay, well that's good. Mark Granovetter is a social researcher from 1973, and he's actually cited most often in conversations about social networking because of a groundbreaking study that he concluded in a paper called The Strength of Weak Ties. Now in 1995, he took that information and he applied it to the concept of social networks. Now in a groundbreaking classic study of 282 men, he went and asked them, how did you get your job? Well, now the truth is it's not too surprising that these people said that they got it through a friend. But as you start to scratch beneath the surface, what kind of friend did they actually get this job from? Well, it turns out that these weren't friends or family members. These were friends of friends. Mark called them the weak ties. What's happening in this situation is that while your friends and family are interested in seeing you succeed, it turns out that they're basically associated or exposed to the same kinds of opportunities that you are. And they also have a preconceived notion about who you are. So it's the friends of friends, once you've established credibility and reliability, who are in the best position to send you new opportunities. And when it comes to business networking as an independent business owner, it's the people who trust you who are in the best position to send you new clients. Joe trusts you, and Mike trusts Joe. So if Joe says that you're cool, that may be all it takes for Mike. And if everybody keeps open and transparent and there's a lot of communication happening here, Mike could turn into a really stellar client or customer for you. And that's a weak tie. I have an example of a weak tie that happened in the real world. 1994. I had the dream apartment for a 24-year-old. It was 2,000 square feet on the ground floor of an old Queen Anne mansion. It had stuccoed walls and dark trim wood, as you can see. It had 2 enclosed porches, 2 full bathrooms. I have this place all to myself. Leaded glass, French doors. I think I paid like $850 for this thing. And it's the kind of place that never gets advertised. It passes from tenant to tenant. So at the time, I'm 24, I had gotten out of college and I was living in a group house with a bunch of friends, and I had no hurry to move out. I knew that the next place that I got, because I wasn't ready to buy yet, was going to be the best apartment I could find. And I spent time in 1994 in the newspapers, and I went on Craigslist, and I asked my friends, and I put the word out there, if anybody knows of a really great apartment, I'm looking. Well, this particular place Turns out that the woman who lived here who was moving out, she was the best friend of a sister of the roommate of a guy that I dated for like 4 weeks. And the truth is like, his name was Nils, but I was racking my brain last night. What is his name? Like, I can remember he was really cute, but all I can really remember about him is that, hey, he got me my great apartment. Well, he didn't. His roommate's sister's best friend did. And that's the power of weak tie. Each and every single one of us has a story just like this, and if you think about it, you'll see that this is happening around you all the time. But the one ingredient that is happening every time you get to that, oh goodness, this just went to the end of the slides. Every time you get to a story like that, a power of weak ties, the one thing that happened was my third principle, which is it shows up. Somebody showed up. I showed up at the house party. I met Nils. I hung out with his friend. I mentioned to his roommate that I was looking for a place. Everybody was in communication. The woman who lived there, she wasn't trying to get out of a lease. She just really liked her apartment too, and she knew that I'm going to wait until somebody cool moves into this. And so she told her friends, I'm moving out if you want to pass the word. And so we all showed up. And because of that, this power of weak ties was able to happen. And Woody Allen says 90% of success is showing up. So how do you show up in business networking? Well, you show up at events. You show up online. You show up online before the event and you do your homework. You find out who's going to be here and you find out who you have in common, and you go to the LinkedIn and you see some of these second degrees and you say, hey, we both know Danny Bronski. We should talk. That's showing up online. And then after the event, you still show up. You send them an email. Better yet, you tweet them or retweet them. You can go to their blog and you can leave a very thoughtful comment. This is all about establishing trust and using these as tools to do what we already do, which is already common sense to all of us. This isn't rocket science. So as I'm talking about social networking here, it does get into the concept of friends. And the friends that I say shouldn't trust you. I use that phrase in personal friendships as well as professional friendships. Because when you think about your personal friendships, the ones that aren't business related, there's really no reason why they should trust you as a business owner. You've done nothing to establish that trust. I've got a friend from college who is not a close friend. We are on Facebook together, so I see her around every now and then. I know she's a bookkeeper. I just happen to know she's a bookkeeper. I was an independent photographer about 10 years ago, and she hired me to take pictures of her babies. Now, as a professional, she trusted me. She let me into her home. I did a stellar job. I was reliable. I was trustworthy, and she recommended me to lots of her friends, and I got quite a bit of work out of her. But if she had said, hey, Lara, I sent you all these clients. Can't you send me any back? I would have said, no, I'm sorry, I can't. I don't know anything about your business. I don't know if you're a very good bookkeeper. You're really witty, and you're really fun on Facebook, and you're a friend of mine. But a bookkeeper messes up the books of a company can cost a lot of money. And I wasn't in a position where she and I were trying to build a referral relationship. So that's an example of, I didn't trust her, nor should I have. Now, in business relationships, actually, before I go on to business relationships, I want to share something that showed up on one of my news feeds on Facebook. This actually really surprised me to see this. Just unfriended someone who keeps posting about her business. I didn't like being sold to on Facebook. Take your self-promotion somewhere else. This shocked me because I'm an independent business owner and I'm very passionate about my business and I'm very careful not to talk about it too much with my friends. But come on, you unfriended somebody because you didn't like that she kept talking about her business. But it turns out there's this really great study from Exact Target that came out, and it turns out that there are 43% of internet consumers have liked a brand. That means that they've liked a business page. Of those 43%, 70% of those users have said that they didn't feel that they'd given the company permission to market to them. And better, more than that, 39% of people who have liked a brand on Facebook said marketers should never interpret my like as permission to post a marketing message that would appear in my newsfeed. I mean, what is it all the social media marketing guys are telling us about Facebook? They're saying, go to Facebook because your customers are there. I was hanging out in the speaker's lounge earlier and someone was talking about how Honda car, I think, is spending $28 a person per acquisition for positioning on Facebook. And I'm thinking, yes, you are supposed to engage in conversations with your customer, but you're not supposed to sell to them. because the users are not interested in buying on Facebook. 59% of those internet consumers say that the reason they use Facebook is to maintain personal relationships. So what about business networking? What about peer-to-peer? Okay, I'm going to be very careful. I'm not going to sell to people who are fans on my Facebook page. But what about my peers? Well, 15% say that they go to Facebook for professional contacts. So if that's what's happening, then I say, go to a different pond. There are lots of communities where business networking is happening, where peer-to-peer relationships are being formed. Now I can relate. I am a new owner of a Nissan Leaf. This is one of those 100% electric cars. It's completely emission-free. This isn't a hybrid. These are the ones that you plug it in with an extension cord, and there's no oil changes, there's no transmission changes, there's no fluid, there's no engine. It's a motor. And the thing runs pretty fast. It seats 5 people, and I'm a total advocate. I love being associated with the electric car movement. I mean, it's just kind of like, you should see my husband. He really geeks out on this. So, did I like the Nissan Leaf page? Yeah, I totally did. Why? Well, if you ask me why, I would say because I want Nissan to keep me informed of the electric car movement. I want to know when new public power stations are showing up in Washington State, because they're popping up every month. There's some new ones, and Nissan is letting me know about that. I want to know what the legislation is around electric cars. I want to know if they're making any new improvements to their electric cars. And I really want to know, get little invitations to things like this documentary. There's a documentary called The Revenge of the Electric Car that's showing at Varsity. And Nissan invited me to an exclusive screening of that because of Facebook. Thanks. Now, would I feel that great about Nissan if they start trying to sell me on another car? I already have a car. So if all of the messages that happen on that board or on that wall are all about new financing coming out, new colors, come in, get your car now, tell your friends, I might be like, I don't like you any less, but I am going to unlike you on Facebook because that's not what I'm interested in engaging with here. So how does this relate to your professional relationships? Well, I think when it really comes down to it, your professional relationships are no different than these personal relationships. It's all about this trust equation. And the trust equation, for those of you who missed it, it basically has to do with credibility and reliability and intimacy need to be established before you can start being self-oriented, before you can start being salesy. So your professional relationships follow the exact same equation. I call it being human. And so the next of my guiding principles is be human. I have this hanging on my wall in my office, and it was based on or inspired by Seth Godin's book Lynchpin. And it's by a guy named Hugh MacLeod, and you can buy one of these at Gaping Void Gallery. And I say that because I like this guy, I like his work. He says all artists are entrepreneurs and all entrepreneurs are artists. I really relate to this because for me, my business is an extension of my self-expression. It's my baby. I'm passionate about it. I want to talk about it. I want to geek out about trends in social networking, and I want to geek out about independent business. And I want to be careful that my friends don't feel like I'm trying to sell them on it. And some of my friends don't want to hear about it. They're nice. They'll ask me about business every now and then, but they want to know big picture, like how are you, Lara, not how is the business. And I don't ask them about their job at Microsoft. I don't say, how'd that promotion go, or how's it going with your review? And so we keep that out of the conversation. So I was kind of sad to hear that I wasn't supposed to be talking about my business on Facebook, until I started to understand that there are other places where you can geek out, and that's with your peers. So once you know yourself, once you know what kind of business you're in and what kind of peers you're looking for and looking to network with, it comes back down to these 4 guiding principles, or these 5 ones, but I listed the first 3 so far. That you know yourself, that you be human, that you show up, and the 4th one is that you be helpful. You can't have a slide deck at a conference like this without doing one of these cat pictures, so forgive me for the cat picture. Being helpful is also kind of like being human. It's something we already do intuitively. We do this with our friends all the time. When someone's being friendly, when they're being a good friend, they're being helpful. There was a great study out of Princeton by a professor, Susan Fisk, and it basically came down to what are the 2 questions that people ask you when they meet you? Well, it turns out that they ask you, how warm are you? And how competent? So warmth can be measured by things like trustworthiness, friendliness, sociability. Competency can be judged by creativity, intelligence, perceived ability. All social perception reflects evolutionary pressures. So the root of these questions is really, what is the intention? Is this person a friend or a foe? And if they're a foe, are they capable of hurting me? And if they're a friend, can they help me? So if people are thinking those two questions, even intuitively and subconsciously they're thinking those questions when they meet you, how are you answering that? How are you able to help them? This is part of the backbone of trust. The fifth guiding principle is feed the machine. And again, this is something that we've been doing since preschool. We are very intuitive about helping out our friends, helping out the causes and the communities and the organizations that are important to us. Why is it so hard for us to think of that when we look at our business peers? Why are we constantly looking for what's in it for me? Why would I send you clients if you're not going to send me any back? Because it's about feeding the machine. And in social networking, we call that social capital. I think that there's 4 easy ways to feed the machine. The first one is make someone's client happy. This isn't going to be very difficult for you to make someone's client happy. In the real life, this happens all the time. I have a friend whose parents helped her and her husband with the down payment on their house. Wonderful gift. And we were having dinner one time and the husband was saying, and I was just wondering, how am I supposed to thank these parents? They're so awesome. And I just didn't even really know. I make them dinner all the time and I will help them out at their house. How do I thank them? Well, he asked them. And guess what they said? They said the obvious, actually, when you think about it, make our daughter happy. You make our daughter happy and that's good enough for us. Well, it's very simple for you to make a client happy as well. If someone sends you a client and you make that client's life so easy, because you're just doing your job well, you're just doing really well what you already do, and that person looks good, are they going to be inclined to send you more? Absolutely. The second one is make someone's job easy. I think back to the days when we were kids and you got your friends to help you move your apartment. This is before we could afford to hire